VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on VCY America. My name is Jim Schneider. How many times have you put your television set on to quickly turn it off and say, I don't want that kind of junk coming into my home? Well, folks, it's about to get worse if some changes take place, because there are a growing number of people concerned after learning that the Federal Communications Commission is considering relaxing their indecency rules so that it would open the door for nudity and expletives on television. We're going to be talking about this today, as well as what you can do about it. Our special guest is Patrick Truman. He is the CEO and president of Morality in Media. He's a former chief of the Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section of the Criminal Division of the U.S. Department of Justice from 1988 to 1993. While he supervised also the prosecution of child sex crimes, child pornography, and obscenity. He has more than 3 decades of experience as a lawyer. He's litigated cases at all levels of the federal system, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Pat, nice to have you with us today on Crosstalk.
Thanks, Jim. I really appreciate you having me on.
If you would, let's just kind of set a foundation to help us understand what is the current law or the current policies pertaining to indecency on broadcast media.
Jim, the federal statute on this, the federal law, says that on broadcast TV, now not on cable, because they didn't have cable back then, but on broadcast TV, you're not allowed to have any indecency or profanity. So nudity or, various bad language, you're not allowed to have it. Now that law is administered by the Federal Communications Commission. And the current chairman of that commission has looked the other way, claiming that this was tied up in the courts. Well, it wasn't tied up in the courts all across the country, but he hasn't enforced the law since President Obama put him in office. And now that he's leaving office, he wants to change the law that he wouldn't enforce to say that nudity and profanity, that's okay in a television show on broadcast TV as long as it isn't sustained incidences. So if he gets that changed, it won't change the law, but it'll change how the law is administered. So we're fighting back.
Now, we understand, and you made reference to the chair of the commission just turning his head the other way, but we understand there was a huge dismissing of many pending indecency complaints before the commission that's just been gathering some dust. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. You see, when this fellow, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, came into office, Julius Genachowski, 4 years ago, people were piling complaints onto the Federal Communications Commission because the Bush administration actually did a good job of enforcing indecency on television. And then when Genachowski got in, he said, well, this is tied up in the courts. There were 2 court cases on this, but they were only in certain parts of the country, New York. But he said, well, it's tied up in the courts. We'll wait till the courts decide. Well, last summer, in June, the United States Supreme Court decided, and what do you know? The current standard is just fine. And so at that time, a year ago, they could have begun enforcing against NBC, CBS, all this indecency that's been on television. They could stop it. But rather than do that, now a year later, we find out that they have trashed those citizen complaints, more than 1 million of them that have come into the Federal Communications Commission, because they wanted to get rid of what they said their backlog. They did that by telling the American public, we don't care about you or what you think. And furthermore, we're going to change this standard that we have for enforcement, and it's going to be a lot worse on television than it's ever been before.
Folks, if I can put this as a word picture for you, if you were to see my desk right now, it is piled high with papers, all kinds of projects and issues that I'm dealing with. And in essence, if I would just take my arm and just swipe everything right off my desk and let it fall into my trash container and say, I'm just dismissing these complaints, I need a fresh start, that's in essence what we have seen, Pat, the FCC do.
That's a good analogy, and that's what they did.
And folks, those concerns are still there, but they're saying, well, these are too stale to pursue, or they went beyond the statute of limitations, or well, it's outside our jurisdiction. We don't have sufficient information on this, and just like that, they just sweep all of these off the desk and in essence throw them in the trash container and say, well, there's no issues going on right now. Pat, as we take a look at this court decision, didn't the court just simply say, FCC, you didn't do a good enough job in relaying to the broadcast stations what the indecency standards were and what their expectations were?
Yes, it comes down to this. Last summer, the Supreme Court ruled on the regulation at the Federal Communications Commission, the rules that they set up to enforce indecency. Now, you just by way of understanding, see, Congress has passed a law 50, 70 years ago prohibiting indecency, but how is that law going to be enforced? Well, the Bush administration changed the enforcement to make sure that every incidence of indecency and nudity would be enforced and stopped. And the NBC and Fox and the others, they brought a court case against that. Well, last summer the court said, well, at the time when the Bush administration did this, they didn't give proper notice, but the networks have notice now, and the Supreme Court left that standard in place. And the standard was to prohibit all acts of indecency and every mention of the F word or other profanity. So that happened a year ago. Now, why hasn't this been enforced? And the reason is, folks, we all know why it isn't enforced. This administration doesn't believe in the law here. They are with the extreme First Amendment crowd, the ACLU and others, that don't, and the networks that don't want any enforcement. But you know, Jim, the Supreme Court has said itself, in dealing with this issue more than 30 years ago when they dealt with whether or not it was constitutional to prohibit nudity on television and profanity, they said a person in their own home has a right to be left alone, and the networks coming into our homes don't have any right to put this stuff on. Now, the networks have never agreed with that. So they've got a champion at the Federal Communications Commission who thinks that the networks ought to be able to have nudity and profanity. So when you look around, you say, well, why has it gotten so bad? It's the public officials that our president has put in place. And the one here, and I've got a long list, but this one is Julius Janikowski, the head of the Federal Communications Commission.
Well, let me expand that just a bit, because the bigger picture, as you compare the administrations, it was April 10th, just a couple of weeks ago, that your organization, Morality in Media, put forth a stunning press release asking this question: is Eric Holder in bed with the porn industry, and that he's refusing to enforce federal laws prohibiting hardcore, obscene pornography. What is causing you to ask this question?
Well, I used to head that office at the Justice Department that was charged with prosecuting hardcore adult pornography under Reagan administration and then Bush 1. The father of the immediate past president. We have laws on the books, Jim, that prohibit the distribution of hardcore pornography on the Internet, on cable and satellite television, in hotels and motels. It's all prohibited. But when Eric Holder got to office, appointed by President Obama, he shut down the office charged with prosecuting these crimes. And so why not ask, is he in bed with the pornographers? The pornographers have money, and they know how to get to you. But it's more than that. Eric Holder just believes, like this Janikowski, that anything goes on the pornography and indecency. And they don't care whether it's on your television, on your computer. They don't care if your kids get it. They are in bed with the pornographers. How
since he's been in office now, Eric Holder, just over 4 years, how many new obscenity cases has the Justice Department initiated?
0.
None?
None. They won't do anything dealing with adult pornography. Now, they brag, oh, well, that's because we're so busy doing child pornography. But as any law enforcement officer who deals with child pornography knows, we have a tremendous plague of child pornography today. Why? It's simply because we're not prosecuting adult pornography. Because a lot of the people caught with pornography, child pornography today, are not pedophiles. They're men like you and me who go on the Internet, they begin looking at softcore pornography, but the more they're on, the harder and the more deviant material they look at to maintain that level of excitement. And then many of them move to child pornography because they find that becomes exciting to them. And so we are growing child pornographers today by not prosecuting adult pornography. And it is illegal to distribute hardcore pornography on the Internet. So all those companies that do that could be put out of business. But Eric Holder is in bed with the pornographers.
And this broader topic, and folks, we're going to give you some points of contact with the FCC, but Morality and Media, again, had put out an article this month about the number of young teenage children accessing pornography, that it's so widespread. Sue, I think it's Berlowitz, Deputy Children's Commissioner, said it should trigger moral panic as to the number of children accessing porn. Clue us in on what's happening there.
Well, the average age of first exposure to hardcore pornography on the Internet is 11. And this is what you have to understand. There's two things. Number one, most kids get pornography for the first time where? In their own home. They get it on the computer, on the laptop. They get it on the iPad, on the phone of their parents. And second of all, when they get more pornography in an hour than their parents ever would have gotten in a lifetime. Because the Internet pornography comes at you so fast. You just keep clicking these buttons, and what that child can see in an hour looking at the Internet is just terrible. And it has a profound effect on the brain. It has an effect on the brains of adults, too, but the prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, needs to develop right, and this has a very bad impact on that prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that you use for good judgment and sound reasoning, etc. And this impacts that. So we do have a pandemic of harm among our children because most kids are getting it, and they first get it at age 11. It's affecting every family, Jim.
My. Patrick Truman is with us today from Morality and Media. And, folks, the Federal Communications Commission that oversees the rules and policies for broadcast television and radio are actually looking at relaxing their indecency standards so that that nudity would be allowed, expletives would be allowed on television. And, folks, if you thought network TV was bad now, once this door is opened, I just fear, Patrick, that it's not going to stop there, but it's going to continue to spiral downward as far as what will be allowed.
Well, that's right. And we've seen this with TV producers like Stephen Bochco, who on NYPD Blue many years ago had that nude scene of a woman with and I won't describe it.
Please.
But that was the case. That was the subject of one of these court cases, and that would be mild compared to what the Federal Communications wants to give them right now.
We're going to take a quick 60-second break, and folks, the question is, what can you do about it? We're going to be providing you some information where your comments can be attained by the Federal Communications Commission. There are some precise guidelines that they have for your interaction in this regard, so stay with us. We'll go through those after the break. Be ready to jot them down. This is Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, geologist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, why don't we find more human fossils?
Chris, the Great Flood of Noah's Day is the event which preserved most of the fossils. Fossils are primarily found in sedimentary rock, made of underwater mud flows, sometimes flowing at high velocities with great abrasive forces. But humans, when they die in water, they float. Somehow would have to get a dead human body to the bottom of the ocean, and then, trapped in the abrasive mud flows, most of it would be totally obliterated. Most fossils are things like clams with a hard outer shell. These have a higher fossilization potential than bones. Chris, we wouldn't expect to find many human fossil remains, and we don't. It'd be nice to find some, but we wouldn't expect it. At least that's the way I see it from a back to Genesis perspective.
To discover more facts that support your faith, Visit us on the web at www.icr.org. That's www.icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Patrick Truman is with us here today. He is the CEO and president of Morality in Media. And our topic today is, well, it's the FCC as they are considering relaxing their indecency standards. And many times we just want to get on the phone and make a call to say, no, don't do that. But in this case, Pat, that doesn't work. The phone calls are not accepted, but there is a means for people across this nation to contact the FCC to be involved in letting their comments be made known regarding this matter. Tell us the process.
Well, it was only 10 days ago or so where this was announced that we could make a comment because they want to reduce these standards to allow nudity. And a lot of groups jumped into this. Our partners here with American Family Association, Parents Television Council, good people like this have helped to generate already, Jim, about 100,000 complaints. And I bet there aren't 10 people writing to say, oh, yeah, we want more nudity. So you can, here's a simple way to file your complaint. It's complicated if you go to the Federal Communications Commission website. But if you go to our website, which is pornharms.com, you click on a button, you'll see right there to file a complaint.
Pornharms.com is the website. Also, as a courtesy to our listeners, we've also posted this on our VCY website, VCYAmerica.org. You'll find it right at the top of the page there. In addition, we know that there are folk, and we have many rural listeners as well, who don't have internet access. The FCC also has given a specific address that you can utilize in order to let your comments arrive to them. The deadline, we understand, Pat, is now May 20th for accepting the comments.
That's right, May 20th. So you got plenty of time, but file and get all your friends to file.
Folks, the mailing address to the FCC, again, it's not anything that they have a dedicated phone line for, but you can put your comments in writing for them to receive by May 20th. Here, so we have less than 30 days to give you the opportunity to let your voice be heard. You can simply write to FCC, and that's 445 12th Street Southwest, so SW. 445 12th Street, SW for Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20554. Now, it's important for you to write the proceeding docket number, which is 13-86 if you're given written comments. If you're doing the online comments going through Pornharms, the pornharms.com website or VCYAmerica.org, you'll see that docket number right there, that 13-86. But if you're putting your comments in writing, it's FCC 445 12th Street Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20554, and then be sure to reference docket number 13-86 for your comments to be heard on this. But time is of the essence. They're only accepting these comments for this 30-day window, after which they close them off. They'll respond to the comments, and then shortly after, Pat, we understand there will be some rulemaking that the FCC will actually do then.
Yes, and there's another reason why I think people need to wake up and do something about this right now. In the next month or two, there will be 2 new nominations for Federal Communications Commissioners. Mm-hmm. The Republican Party gets to nominate one, so that'll come from Congress. Then the President gets to nominate the new chairman. That terrible chairman we have right now is stepping down. So there are only 5 commissioners. These next 2 nominees need to know that people really care about this issue. So the more comments that we can get to the Federal Communications Commission on this, the more the Senate, when they're considering whether to approve these 2 nominations, the more they will know that people really care about this anymore. And we have to care about it. When kids look at nudity on television, what do? You know what they do? They go to the Internet if they have access because they want more. That show might be over, but they can go to the Internet. And, so we're feeding kids with just network television, this indecent material, and it starts them on a bad path. So we have a right to control the airwaves, not the Federal Communications Commission, because the law is in place. They at the FCC are merely supposed to enforce the laws that we got in place many years ago.
Whose interest is the FCC to represent? Is it that of the American public or that of the entertainment industry?
Only the American public. You know, NBC, Fox, and CBS and ABC get a broadcast license to put on whatever they want. But do you know what that costs them? It costs them nothing. But they have to agree that they will broadcast in the public interest. And so Congress, to make sure they broadcast in the public interest, passed a statute, a federal law, to say you cannot broadcast indecent material or profane material. Now, that's many years old. That's from the 30s. But that is still in effect. And so the Federal Communications Commission now, to try to weaken that law by saying that they're only going to enforce the law if there's repeated acts of nudity or repeated F-word acts, sustained, I guess is the term they use. That is not right, because the law says no indecency, no profanity, where the FCC wants to say, well, we'll allow some nudity and we'll allow some profanity. No, that we can't allow this to happen.
And if they do, I just fear, Pat, even further, it's just going to open Pandora's box for the next step to be taken in this downward moral slide as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, how far down can we go?
Yeah. Well, you there at Morality and Media certainly have witnessed what has taken place there as it relates to the harm of pornography and indecency and so on. And if you would address that question, because people say, well, what harm is there if there's some brief nudity? I mean, that's who we are. What harm is there if there's an expletive? What harm is there by allowing this on network television?
Well, first of all, we have a right to be left alone in our own homes. An executive from ABC or NBC or a Hollywood actor has no right to walk in our front door uninvited and shout the F word or disrobe. And the same goes, the Supreme Court has said, with respect to television. Now, if you want to go get pornography, if you want that kind of indecent language, cable TV is not regulated. It's unfortunate, but it's not regulated. Unless they have hardcore pornography, now that is prohibited. But as you know, on cable they use the F word all the time. But NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox are required to follow the law. And I will point out, there's most people have cable. But even if you have cable, you have Fox and you have CBS, NBC, and ABC. And that's the same broadcasting that they have for non-cable television. So if we can win this for non-cable television, we'll also win it for a chunk of cable television, because they're not going to change their programming just because it's on cable. I hope that's clear. And so we have to say there is a law, there is a standard, and we, the public, have a right to have it upheld. That's why they call the airwaves the public airwaves. We own them, not the networks.
Folks, again, you can go to the website pornharms.com, and you'll find very easy step-by-step there for filling out the form to the Federal Communications Commission to let your comment be heard. Folks, if you don't speak up, are you waiting for the pornography industry to give their comments for the FCC to consider? It's time. And last week here on the program, somebody said, oh, you have all these stories. What can we do? Today we're telling about something tangible, positive that you can do to have your voice heard on this. Now, in addition to contacting the FCC, do you see a congressional component to this as well, Pat?
Yes, I certainly do. And Tim Winter, the president of Parents Television Council, and I have drafted a letter to the two committees, one in the U.S. House and one in the U.S. Senate, that have jurisdiction over the Federal Communications Commission. And we've got a letter that's going to go to every one of those members asking them to pay attention to what the FCC is trying to do to us and to use their influence to stop it. So I would just say to people, if they are talking to their member of Congress, you have one U.S. House member and you have 2 U.S. senators for your state. When you talk to them, tell them you don't want the Federal Communications Commission to change indecency standards. You want them left alone, and you want them vigorously enforced. So that's something else that people can do. First thing is get your comment into the FCC by going to our website. But second of all, talk to your member of Congress, and whether they're on those 2 special committees, it doesn't matter. They need to hear from you because they have friends in Congress who are on those committees if they're not. And, they all talk to each other, and if they say, gee, every time I go to a town hall meeting or every time we pick up the phone, it's someone complaining about the FCC trying to bring nudity on TV. So I want you to stop it. So they'll be talking to each other.
And folks, keep in mind that many, many congressmen and senators are holding these town hall meetings or listening sessions in your congressional district, and this is an opportunity for you to go and be that advocate for decency in that regard by speaking up at these meetings, making the phone calls to their offices. You know the numbers, we give them all the time, to the House, 202-225-3121, and to the Senate, 202-224-3121. But what's the critical timetable is that May 20th is when the window closes as far as accepting public comments on this whole matter of whether or not the FCC should consider relaxing their indecency standards. So if you visit the website, pornharms.com. Also, you'll find it on our website, VCYAmerica.org. You'll find the links there that will take you directly to the FCC page, what docket number to put in there, and to give you the opportunity to put down what comments you have pertaining to this issue. Today, I'd like to open the phone lines, give you opportunity to speak with our guest today, Pat Truman. He is the CEO and president of Morality in Media. Is this an issue of concern to you? Our telephone number to Crosstalk is 1-800-733-9829. 1-800-733-9829. Are you as a parent, are you as a grandparent, are you as an individual concerned about the opening up the airwaves for nudity, for obscenities, for expletives to be on television? Our number, 800-733-9829. On your dealing with this issue, press release, one of the things that you've mentioned is that the lack of prosecution on the pornography issues and lack of prosecution by our Justice Department actually contributes to the trafficking of women and the global sex trade. How so?
Well, every anti-sex trafficking group in the country, and there's a lot of them, they will all tell you that what is creating the demand for sexually trafficked women or the demand for prostitution in general is pornography. And the studies on this show that if a person is looking at pornography, they're 4 times more likely to hire a prostituted woman. And many of those that are being prostituted are actually sexually trafficked women. Now, we just got published in the Johns Hopkins Journal, Johns Hopkins University, an article, research article on the link between pornography and sex trafficking. But it makes sense. It creates a demand. These men who just spend all their time looking at pornography, they want to go out and find sex, and that's how it happens.
We're going to take a quick break. I see the lines are packed full of callers right now, so we'll get to the calls following the break. You're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America. Pat Truman is our guest with the group Morality in Media. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Have you ever had someone attempt to talk to you about the Watchtower Society or the Book of Mormon? Or perhaps a friend has told you they've started yoga and invite you to participate. You know you heard something about these religions and teachings, but never had the material in your hand to give a biblical response to their teachings. Well, now you can. 2 world-renowned researchers, Dr. Ron Carlson and Ed Decker, have teamed up to write Fast Facts on False Teachings, an easy-to-use resource guide that gives you quick, clear facts about several cults and false teachings. You'll find chapters on atheism, Freemasonry, Hinduism and yoga, Islam, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormonism, and much more. Fast Facts on False Teachings is available for a donation of $16 or more by writing VCY America at 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53208. To make your donation by phone, call 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. Our discussion today surrounds the FCC that is considering relaxing indecency standards, kind of throwing it wide open for the public for you to respond, actually the country as a whole, to weigh in on their website. How do you file your comments? You can go to the website of our guest today from Morality and Media, to the site pornharms.com, pornharms.com. We also have the information available at the top of our website, vcyamerica.org. Let's begin with our calls here. Let's start right in our home city of Milwaukee. Denise, go ahead. You're on the air.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I love this show because you always give out information that is pertinent and that I don't even know anything about if I didn't listen to this radio station. And I'm going to sign on, and I'm going to take this information everywhere I go to different churches, because the TV is appalling as it is. And if they relax it, we're going down.
Yeah, it is really, really disturbing, and certainly we see how far our culture is going down now that's so estranged from God, but this is something that's going to just take it so much further and faster
and further.
Standards are put into place here.
Yes, so I thank you so much for your broadcast and for alerting the public, and I'm going to do my part.
Thank you for your call.
Okay.
And that's what it takes, doesn't it, Pat, for
yes,
people?
Yes, it does, and she's so right, because once you have the Federal Communications Commission saying that nudity and profanity is okay, or some acts of it, well, then, of course, the networks are going to have more of it. Right now, they might be afraid of being prosecuted, but when the Federal Communications Commission changes the rules and said it's okay, what do you expect you're going to get? So she's so right.
Let's go to Marshfield. Kathy, you're on the air.
Hi. How pornography affected me. My 14-year-old son is being charged with second-degree sexual assault as the result of pornography. I found he was looking at pornography on my computer, and I was so disgusted by it that I actually threw it in the bathtub and let it soak overnight, and I poured drain cleaner on them and threw them out. I did not want anybody to see the hard drive and have it erased. But my son, that's why he's being charged with second-degree sexual assault, is because of pornography. And it does do harm. It's seriously, my child, I don't know if he's going to go to a boys' correctional school or what because of this. And as a parent, I'm responsible.
Pat, your comment on this.
Yes, child-on-child sex abuse is skyrocketing in America, because especially when the boys are looking at pornography, the first thing they want to do is try out what they saw. And that's what happened to your boy, and I hear about this every week. So child-on-child sex abuse, any place in the world where there's pornography, you're going to see that. Now, I don't know why people don't demand that the Attorney General of the United States be removed from office for not enforcing these laws, because if these laws were vigorously enforced, and I used to be in charge of them, but if they were vigorously enforced, that pornography would not be available on the computer for your son to view. These companies, there's only a handful of companies that control virtually all the hardcore commercial porn sites on the Internet. And then there's several free sites on the Internet controlled by a handful of companies. And the Justice Department could remove those by prosecuting them.
Yes. Well, in Eau Claire, there was 11 men that were indicted for pandering and child prostitutes. All they got was misdemeanors.
Yeah.
Kathy, thanks for your comments.
I don't envy you here for what you're going through.
Thank you, Kathy, for your call. Let's go to Findlay, Ohio. Carlos, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. Let me just say, for starters, I love your show, and I'm so honored to be on the phone with you right now, sir.
Thank you for calling.
You're welcome. You see, my problem is I fail to understand what little Billy hearing the occasional expletive. I fail to understand what effect little Billy hearing the occasional expletive on television will have on him when he already hears it in the home.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. Let's clean up our language in the home, too.
I believe
and what we're saying with the Federal Communications Commission is that we didn't invite ABC into our home to say the F word. So they're not invited, they're not allowed. Federal law doesn't allow it. But I guess your point is that if he's already hearing it in the home from his mom and dad, then, of course, that's the authority that boy or girl is going to listen to. So parents have some responsibility here, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in politics, we say change always happens on a local level before it happens on a national level. So, too, with our families. Change must first happen on a home level, a domestic level.
Well, let me also say, Carlos, that there are a whole lot of homes across this country, including my own, that don't allow that kind of language in the home. And as a result, unless action is taken in this regard, that's going to enter into all those homes that already ban such language from taking place in the home. That's why it's critical for us to not only take stock of what's going on in our home, but also to take stock of what's going on within our country as well. And I appreciate your call here today. Our telephone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. We have a couple open lines again, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Holly, calling from Florida. You're on the air, Holly.
Hi. Yeah, I have to say I'm one of those parents, too, that don't allow swearing in my home, so I don't think that I should have to have it, because the TV's in my home, too. But my question is do they regulate commercials? Because lately I have to turn off the TV during commercials because they seem to be worse than shows, and I'll hang up now. I'm just curious about the regulation of commercials as well.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
Pat?
Well, the distinction is whether it's the commercial on cable television or it's on broadcast television. Now, most people have cable, so the commercials they can use bad language. But if it's on broadcast TV, and a lot of parents don't have cable because they don't want that stuff. But if it's on broadcast TV, they're not allowed to have it. So it's the same for commercials as for a television show.
And hence, when there's a violation of that, that's why people contact the FCC to make a complaint. And this is what's so discouraging by this is that recently, under the current chair, all these indecency complaints were just wiped right off the table and said, well, we're going to start from scratch now. We're just taking care of this backlog by not dealing with it. And this is where it really behooves the American public, Patrick, to continue to file those indecency comments.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you can easily file a comment about a show that has indecency by going to the website of the Federal Communications Commission. That's FCC.gov, FCC.gov. And if you type in the word indecency, the page will open up where you can file that complaint. I would just mention one other thing. I think the Federal Communications Commission should be moved out of Washington, D.C., and put in the homeland. People that have values in Wisconsin and Florida and Ohio, they get to Washington, D.C., and you have these slick bureaucrats, and, they don't seem to care what goes on television. So that's my point.
Let's go to our next caller. John, thanks for calling. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. I can remember that a time that if you told me I had a wardrobe malfunction, that would have meant I had two different kind of socks. But
yeah.
Now they're pushing it now. I mean, I think they already crossed the line. I mean, you look at crime and shows like that with autopsy displays, kidnapping, killing, torture. They're already doing that.
Yes, they are. And when you have the FCC supposedly stopping that, and they look the other way, and now they want to say, it's all okay with us. They don't want to do their job. They don't want to protect people in their home and your children. And so now's the time to speak up.
And I just think that all the scenes they show are kind of like hypnotic. They have it all fast, like a strobe light there, and even the cops. I'm still waiting for the good cop.
Thank you, John, for your comments here today. Jessica, you're next. Thanks for calling Crosstalk.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes, my question is, I'm definitely against all the nasty stuff on TV. I think it's already gone too far. My question is, I know in the past there's been some talk. How do we protect Christian speech and Christian programming that might be, offensive to Muslims or whatever? How do you get the bad stuff off without jeopardizing, Christian programming or
we're talking specifically we're talking specifically on obscenity and nudity issues, and generally these are not issues that impact Christian broadcasters, but something that has been part of the limits on First Amendment situations. Your comment on that, Pat?
Well, yes, I don't know quite what the caller means in terms of protecting these shows, because they don't really have this kind of material on there, and so I don't see that as a threat.
Well, what I mean is, for example, I know there's some movements to get Christian radio off because it's offensive to certain groups.
Oh, I see.
So
let me just comment on that. The Christian, there are First Amendment rights, and so just the idea that you can say, well, I'm offended just because it's someone expressing their religious beliefs, that's not allowed under our Constitution. So that, we just have to be vigilant in bringing those cases to court.
Let's go to Port Charlotte, Florida. Vincent, you're on the air.
Yes, I'd like to make two quick comments. And the first thing I'd like to say is that this administration is horrible, and I'm appalled that Barack Obama and Eric Holder and the whole thing. But the real, we need to understand that they didn't start this. They are just pushing the ball down the track as far as the thing. Because in George Bush's administration, pornography and all the other things was thriving. Now, that's that statement. Now, the next one
let's deal with that one first, Vincent, and that is, though, what you said earlier, Patrick, is that the Bush administration prosecuted. So when issues and complaints were filed, they were prosecuted.
Well, on television they were. The incidents of indecency were vigorously prosecuted. Now, he's very right, though, with respect to pornography, like cable or pornography or pornography in hotels and motels or on the Internet. The Bush administration was very lax on that. And you have to have, I think this is what the caller is getting at, you have to have a uniform standard. You can't say this is okay here and that's not okay there, because it was one thing for the Bush administration to be vigorous with respect to what was on broadcast TV. Any incidents of indecency were prosecuted. But if they're not going to prosecute the worst stuff, which is hardcore pornography, and they hardly did any of that, well, look what you have. So he's right, and it hasn't been just Republicans or Democrats at the Federal Communication Commission. It's been the commissioners themselves under Republicans and Democrats, except that there was a good commissioner under the last President Bush, not the first one. But, in fact, under the first one, it was Colin Powell's son. And he was terrible on this thing. But I think the caller's right. You've got to have everybody involved in this. Vincent, this is not something that affects one political party. This is something that affects both.
Vincent, you had a second comment?
And my second comment is, I want everybody that's listening, I want them to remember Martin Luther King and how he brung down the busing and all that. Now, listen.
I tell you what, that's not our topic here today, Vincent, so I'm going to move on. We got a break here as well. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Our guest today is Pat Truman. If you missed the contact information for having your comments filed with the FCC, be listening. We'll give them to you in this final segment again. This is Crosstalk on VCY.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. We're continuing our series on a biblical worldview and money, 20 points. We're on point number 8 today. A wise man does not trust in riches. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 speaks to this. Now, as we've explained, there's nothing wrong with money or having money. It's really neutral. It's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. And we don't place our trust in our money. We place our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ alone. Number 9, a wise man understands that real money is gold and silver, and God owns it all. Haggai 2 verse 8 speaks to this. A wise man understands that real money is something that has intrinsic value, not a fiat paper currency that can be inflated at the whim of the politicians and the central bankers. So a godly man or a wise man understands what is of real value, what's a real hard asset, and they have diversification. The Bible speaks to that as well. We'll continue on our next program.
You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network. As the clock ticks very quickly, I want to again give you the information here in this final segment about having your comments heard. We're speaking with Pat Truman from Morality and Media, and this is time is really of the essence. I mean, there is this window that expires on May the 20th, correct?
That's correct. You've got to file your comments now.
And you can go to the websites pornharms.com, pornharms.com. You can go to vcyamerica.org. And your other sister website, moralityandmedia.org, has a button that will take you there, too.
That's right.
Let's go back to the lines. Let's see. Mike, you're our next caller. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Very much, both for your hard work. I would like to think about the bottom line. We're dealing with lust and greed, and when we see something offensive, we should get a list of the advertisers selling their product and their service, and then we have our own list of thousands and into the millions of Christians who find it offensive and say directly to that advertiser, we will not buy your product or buy your service. And I'd like to say, years back, I was flipping through the channels at night, and there was someone selling pornographic videos. Well, I wrote that number down, went to a restaurant, I was at a payphone, and gave God and that sin in Scripture and how it's damaging the families. And then months down the line, they said, we do not take any more phone calls from the payphone, and I think they terminated now. And then I like to say, if you reap a thought, picture, or imagination, you go to an act, a character, and a destiny. So help people to repent from pornography, and God bless you.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your call there. What about this aspect of boycott, Patrick?
Oh, I think that's a very important thing, and it's worked well. American Family Association has done that for years. They go to the sponsor of this material and say, you're done until you stop sponsoring them. And boy, when these television networks find out that they're losing some big sponsors, they get in line. Good point.
John and Sheboygan, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good topic. I'm quite old. I'm 66 years old, and I remember it was a day when I grew up that you had a lot of people watching what's on TV, and there was, if you said one bad word, they jumped on you like a dog on a rabbit. But anyway, the Scripture says to shun the very appearance of evil and put no evil before our eyes. And some of the callers hit right in the head. Money talks. If the Christian community really wants to make an impact on this whole subject, I think it's about time that people realize it's time to get the TV out of the house, number one. And if you can't do that, at least monitor it to the point where children have no access to it unless there's parental supervision. You know, if you tell people they're not having a TV or do this or that commercially, they lose money on this whole deal. They're going to hear what we have to say. But as long as we got TVs in our house so they can sell the commercials, they're just pushing us to the limit and seeing how far they can get away with it. We need to make a stand and make it cost effective that they lose money on what they're doing.
John,
I think that one caller we had who brought up Martin Luther King, wonderful example for us, Martin Luther King. Look at the citizen action. Look what he did with getting the people behind him. So this is what we need. This is our time. Do we want this kind of stuff in our home, brought to our children, to our family? Are we going to succumb to culture, or are we going to fight back? And there's a good example for you right there.
Olney, Illinois. Patrick, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. I just got cable service here in Olney, and I was just really surprised. I was going through my program guide to see, all of my different channels, and they have an adult porn channel there that you can get on there and see stuff, and it just really blew my mind. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
That channel is illegal under federal law. Your Attorney General of the United States, Eric Holder, refuses to do anything about it, and it would be a simple thing to knock them off. And you know what? If you went after one cable company on the hardcore porn channel, all your cable companies would stop carrying it. Because does the chairman of Comcast want to go to jail? Does the chairman of Verizon want to go to jail? No. It takes one case, and you do this cleanup job.
To Jeff in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you're on the air.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that if it was, if the public didn't want all this, it wouldn't be on the air, because the only thing that drives these media companies are ratings. without the ratings, they wouldn't show it. So people that complain about this stuff are in public are usually the ones that sit at home and watch it. That's a sad truth.
Well, I don't really believe that, but I think that the networks, the TV companies, are not imaginative enough to create good quality shows that the public wants. Instead, they go to the lowest common denominator. They put sex in, they put all the profanity in, because that's all they can imagine. There was a time when you had very good writers, very imaginative producers, and I don't deny that the public is hurting in this regard. But the networks and the TV companies, they're driving this. And you look at what is happening with our younger generation, the kind of lifestyles that they're adopting, they're picking that up from TV.
But you say that they're driving it, but what drives them is ratings and the money they get from advertisers, and they wouldn't get that if people didn't watch it. You know?
Yes, but if they put on good quality television without all this trash, you'd find people would watch it too. The ratings would be high with better quality TV, is what I'm saying.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And certainly every home needs to be on guard what they allow in and not just dismiss it. And I think that's one of the points Jeff is making here. Okay, one final call. John in Robertsdale, Alabama. Just a few seconds. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, sir?
Right to your point. We're almost out of time.
All right. My point is that as Christians, aren't we supposed to control our own children as parents of Christians? Mm-hmm. I mean, shouldn't we tell our children and show our children that this is wrong, we shouldn't watch these things, and this is going against our Christ, our Lord?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, John. I think you're kind of echoing what the previous call was getting at as well. Thank you. Patrick, we have just over a half minute. Again, give us a point of contact, some final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners today.
Well, it's very important that people stand up. You look at our culture, and we're losing it. The Judeo-Christian culture is disappearing in America. This is a good place to start. Go to our website, pornharms.com, and you'll see exactly how to file your complaint and your comment with the Federal Communications Commission. But look around that site, and you'll see how to combat pornography. And I know some people listening today are addicted to pornography. There's ways you can get away from that and protect yourself and your family. Look on that site, and you'll find out.
pornharms.com. Patrick Truman has been our guest today from Morality and Media. Pat, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Jim. God bless.
And God bless you as well. And folks, keep in mind, May 20th is a deadline for the FCC to receive those comments. You can go to pornharms.com, visit VCYAmerica.org. You can. We also have the address there as well where you can contact the FCC. Make sure you mention that docket number 13-86. You'll find that info on both of the websites to guide you accordingly. Our time is gone. Thanks for joining us here on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.